Welcome to By Generations, for Generations, a podcast commemorating 50 years of the Singapore investment company Temasek, and to celebrate the people who have been part of its journey. Temasek was set up in 1974 to take over a collection of 35 companies from Singapore's government in the wake of the country's independence. This allowed the government to focus on its core role of policy making and regulations. Since then, Temasek has evolved from a holding company to a global investor. And while the company is still based in Singapore, it's supported by 13 offices in 9 countries across the world, where the company's dynamic team keeps Temasek moving forward. A few years ago, Temasek set the ambitious goal to cut its portfolio emissions to half of 2010 levels by 2030 and to net zero by 2050. One of the people who helped to set this target was Franziska Zimmermann, who is Director of Sustainability but previously joined Temasek in 2015 as part of the Strategic and Public Affairs team. In her role, she was looking at translating policy into business impact, and sustainable investing was gaining traction at the time. Not long after this, in 2016, Singapore found itself dealing with the haze, a thick smog that appeared across the country. The country grappled with the health and economic impacts of its air quality, prompting intense media scrutiny on investors who had backed the companies responsible. While Temasek was not involved, this did lead to a reassessment of the potential risks within its investments. The realization was that sustainability needed to be a core consideration in evaluating investment opportunities.
Hi, I'm Franziska. I'm the Director for Sustainability at Temasek. What really motivates me in my work is the ability to create impact, the ability to influence and to help shift mindsets. I grew up in Switzerland in a small village, in a kampong, surrounded by farmland, and our household, we also had a garden. So growing up in nature naturally leads you to the fact that you have an understanding and a passion for what relates to you and how nature is important to you and your own life. Furthermore, when I was a teenager, there were several massive environmental incidents. We had, for example, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster that has polluted our soils. We had a chemical incident which has polluted our rivers. And there was also acid rain, which has destroyed a large part of our forests. So understanding of how all of these things impact our livelihoods, impact our farmers' incomes, impact the vegetables in our gardens really hit home and make us realize, or make me realize, how really sustainability is a crucial part for our existence. I was trained as a lawyer, and I really was motivated not to fight the battles in court, but more the battles for humankind. I worked in different industries, in different geographies, and this also at the end brought me to Temasek. Temasek has a very broad perspective across industries, across geographies, and the level of impact that I could have here was very enticing to me. When I started, there was nothing in place. We didn't even have a sustainability team. It was me working out of a different team, starting to really put together the knowledge base on what responsible investing means and why Temasek should think about sustainability as part of its investment approach. I had one colleague working with me, and over time, more and more colleagues started to come on board. We started at first to build our knowledge base around what sustainability means, but things changed quite dramatically when the haze episode happened in 2015. The spotlight was really there. Everybody started to talk about how sustainability actually is a key factor in how we should be thinking about future business. at all levels, from our colleagues on the ground to all the leadership, was thinking about what is the role of Temasek, what is the role of an investor in guiding the companies on corporate behavior, and what can we do in partnership with others to help solve some of those issues. So it has galvanized a lot of our efforts. It has galvanized a lot of our people to really rally around the topic and put more focus on how we address this issue collectively. When we set our climate targets, at first we knew it was very ambitious, but I didn't have an appreciation of how impactful and how transformational the signal was to our portfolio companies on where we would like to head and how important it is to decarbonize their operations and with it our portfolio. One of the things that impresses me at Temasek is that we have the ability to innovate, the ability to think out of the box, and the ability to partner with others. We've created a lot of new platforms, new partnerships that really help us go faster and go further, also in terms of how we deploy our capital for sustainable outcomes. One such example is, how we've built Gen Zero as an investment platform dedicated for decarbonization solutions. Or, for example, our partnership with HSBC on Pentagreen Capital to really address the marginally bankable opportunities across the Southeast Asia region. Project Dragonfly was really our mandate to design the approach by which we integrate sustainability considerations along our investment process. So really thinking about what are the steps we need to take as we take investment decisions to make sure that our investments are not only sound from a financial perspective, but also deliver the right outcomes in terms of the environmental and societal impacts. And this was quite transformational because through that project, it really documents our belief that it's not just about the financial analysis, but also it needs to go hand in hand with an ESG analysis. Project Dragonfly made us a better investor. It made us a more holistic investor. It really is an articulation of our efforts to not just think about the financial returns, but also how our investment impacts society and the environment. Today, sustainability is at the core of our key 2030 strategy. And that really has changed my role from being somebody who keeps pushing the agenda to somebody who gets involved in other people's projects, because it's now everybody's job to look after sustainability. I think the understanding of the importance of sustainability keeps growing. And of course, even though there are some setbacks, I think the fundamentals are quite clear. Many people have a good understanding of what sustainability is and why it is important. We really need to understand now about how do we take the decisions? How do we make sure that we understand that we're part of nature and not isolated from it? Sustainability is a journey, and there's, of course, many highlights along the journey that we've taken. One of them, for sure, was the definition and the rollout of our ESG approach, but also how we've set ambitious climate targets. That has been really transformational for us, but also for some of our portfolio companies. It's very fundamental to sustainability, right? When we think about the basics of the earth and how important it is to sustain the ability of humankind to exist and thrive, that is intergenerational thinking. What we do today matters for the generations to come. What we use today in terms of natural resources matters to how our children and our grandchildren are able to live. So fundamentally, so every generation prospers is all about sustainability. I hope that Temasek remains very successful, but not just in financial terms. My hope for Temasek is to be a trailblazer and continue to be a trailblazer in the way it also uses its capital to not just generate financial returns, but also generate positive impacts for the environment and society.
You've been listening to By Generations, for Generations, a podcast commemorating 50 years of Temasek. To learn more stories about the people who have been part of the company's journey, head to Temasek's 50 by 50 website, tmsk.sg/50 by 50. That's 50x50.